It's indie podcaster time. Let's get into it.
You've been searching for a podcast. Want to know about some great artists? You've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, the podcast father.
By now, certainly, you know I am the host, Jeff Townsend, a.k.a. your indie independent podcast father, and I thank you personally for joining me on another episode this week. I hope everybody listening to this is doing well. So when I first started this project, this journey, this indie podcaster journey, and it has been the most stupendous journey that I have created content on yet. But back to my point, when I first started this journey, this project, Indie Podcaster, I met the team at Goodpods pretty early on. Well, Goodpods is a podcast listening platform and also a little bit of a twist to it because you get to see what your friends and influencers or whoever you're following are listening to. Well, when I first got on Twitter and I started connecting with all these different podcasters, I actually met Goodpods pretty early on. They were great to work with. We communicated a lot. We worked together, and they implemented a lot of different things on their app that focus on indie podcasters. So it had been a while since I got to catch up and talk to the team. So I talked with JJ Ramberg and Ken Ramberg, talked to both of them to come on for an episode and talk about themselves and, of course, Goodpods. So it's a really interesting, good listen. I know a lot of you listening are on Goodpods and know what Goodpods is. Those of you that don't, of course, check it out. But I'm excited to share this conversation with you. I really am. We're going to get into it. I don't want to waste any more time, but you know the spill. Before we jump into this awesome conversation, though, got to take care of a little business. Seriously, this podcast would not exist if it wasn't for the awesome love that you guys show me in the content creator community. If you're not in contact with me and you would like to be, or you'd like to be featured on this podcast, you can go about this in a couple different ways. If you just want to chat with me, hit me up on Twitter at podcast_father. Hit up my website, podcastfather.com. There you will also find a form that you can fill out to be featured on this very podcast. If you really love what I'm doing, I just would love it if you subscribe to this podcast. I'm going to share some sponsors with you. They do help me keep making this podcast, but more importantly, these are great tools that independent podcasters should be using. Podpage, you can build a beautiful podcast website literally in less than 5 minutes, guys. It's amazing. It uses your RSS feed and it automatically creates all of this. You can customize it and do all the different things you want to do. There's all sorts of different packages. You've got to have a website if you're a podcaster or a content creator. You have to. Go to podpage.com, use my code FATHER. This will get you $20 off any pro package. One of the big challenges for new podcasters is marketing your podcast. Do you need help doing that? Well, I've got the solution for you. My friends at PodSpike make marketing your podcast easy, affordable, and effective. They work with you. They pull the legwork. They connect you with all these different resources that you get to choose from. Go to podspike.com, use the code IndiePodcaster. You'll get $20 off your first month of a pro membership. As a podcaster, it's very important to make sure you got a transcript going on for all your episodes. It really is. And my friends at Podden have the ultimate tools to do that. Make your podcast to eye-catching transcript with ease. You really need to get to it. Go to podden.io. All right, let's get into this conversation, which happens to be powered by Riverside.fm. What's that song? Final Countdown.
Close.
All right, this is exciting. I have JJ Ramberg and Ken Ramberg, co-founders and siblings, but co-founders of Goodpods. Thank you both for hanging out with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for inviting us. We're so excited to talk to you.
And we were just talking about how Ken literally does not do a lot of these. He's done one before, I think you said, Ken, so this is awesome.
Well, only for you, Jeff.
Yeah, I was telling you before, Jeff, Ken must like you a lot because he always puts me as the person to do the podcast. Ken is behind the scenes, but for you, he came out from behind the magic wall.
Yeah, JJ is absolutely the face of this company and has the experience and the face to do the great job. Oh, you're welcome.
What are you trying to say about yourself, Ken? My goodness, man.
That's why we don't have the video rolling, Jeff.
No, but JJ kind of signed you up for it last year, too. So I was really quick to remind you that Ken. So I appreciate it. So a little bit of a backstory on how we met. It's actually probably getting close to a year now, which is kind of crazy to think about, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, also, we're in such a weird time warp over the past few years. But yeah, I feel like we've known you for like 10 years.
Yeah, either way, it has been a long couple years, but yet some things just go fast and others don't know. But so we met on Twitter. I'm assuming that I was talking with Ken more often than you, JJ, originally, but I'm trying to think exactly what happened here. I think I downloaded the Goodpods app. Would have been last April or something maybe. And I made a tweet or something saying, I'm going to make a playlist on here. I mean, whose podcast should I add on this playlist? And then there were like hundreds of replies. And I think, I don't know if it was Ken or who it was that messaged me, DM me, and they're like, you should make a group on there. And I think that's how it started, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I mean, what a ride it's been over the past year for you and for us. And I think it's just been a wonderful experience, truly, for both of us.
Hey, Jeff, should we describe what Goodpods does for anyone out there who doesn't know? Would that be helpful?
We're going to get to that. Let's just talk about your guys' experience beforehand, because I know Ken hasn't done a lot of these. JJ, you have, but I still want to hear both of your guys' kind of get that bio in. I know Ken's done a lot of different things too. Maybe not necessarily like in the face of podcasting or news like you have, JJ, but I think it'd be cool to hear that. Then we'll go into Goodpods and what it is. So whoever wants to start can.
Great. Well, I'll start. We'll leave the best for last.
I knew you would do that. I knew you would just take the ball and run.
Yeah, I'm the one with the big mouth. So, well, my background, you know this, Jeff, but my background is that I was a TV anchor. So I was an anchor for NBC News for a lot of years. And I had a podcast and it did really well, but I knew that it wasn't just doing well because I was just, such an engaging host with great guests. I mean, I hope I was all of that. But also I had this machine behind me called NBC News. And I thought, here we go again. It's the people who have industry connections or lots of marketing dollars. Those are the voices that are going to rise up. And really, there are so many other great voices out there. And how do we get them heard? I heard a great phrase recently that said, freedom of speech does not mean freedom of reach. And we wanted to create something that would help all podcasters get listened to. And on the flip side, I was thinking about, as a listener, I always had trouble finding podcasts to listen to. And I was always going out and calling my brother or calling a friend and saying, what are you listening to? And that's why we created Goodpods. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Now here I am explaining Goodpods instead of just me. But I'll finish this and then we can go back into my background. I'm so sorry, Jeff. But anyhow, that's why we created Goodpods, the app where you can follow friends to see what they're listening to. But this was all based on my background, again, as a television host. And Ken and I started another company together, which he could tell you about. So we're co-founders in a couple of things.
Talk to us about growing up a little bit, because we get to hear like that good stuff all the time about Goodpods, but just some brief details on what it was like with you guys growing up together. Was JJ the bully? Was Ken the bully? I'm just curious.
I would say neither of us were the bully. There are 4 kids in our family, and my sister is very involved in Goodpods as well. And as my brother helps out advising on things too. And so Ken is 5 years older than me and is my big brother through and through, even, in this company and in life. But growing up, the 4 of us were just really close. We had parents who were entrepreneurs. So we had first row seats in watching them grow their companies. And they taught us a lot about contributing to the communities that we belong to, and that the world is big, and giving back and caring about others. And, of course, I can remember some times where maybe some beds were short sheeted, or I might have put saran wrap on the toilet one time. I don't know if anyone knows that trick for when you're a kid, but it's disgusting. But we were and still are very close.
I'll ask real quick. So the siblings, I'm not going to ask you to say their names, but are they the people that I've met?
Oh, yeah, you met Mel. Yeah, you met Mel.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Just making that's what I thought. I was just verifying. Ken, what's your take on everything? Was JJ the golden child, or?
JJ was the youngest of the 4, so she absolutely 100% was the golden child, for sure. Could do no wrong, could not get in any trouble no matter how hard she tried. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. But look, we have a very close family. The 4 siblings, we talk to each other, pretty much every day, till today, from growing up until today. And I think we all, like she said, we grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, watched my father work very hard, watched my mother actually work very hard with the first business that I, in fact, started with her. It was called Job Track. And it was one of the first job listing or job posting or career sites on the internet. And I worked side by side with her about 12 years until we eventually sold the company to Monster.com.
Wow.
So, yeah, very tight-knit family. And everybody has different skills.
This is super cool. Not only what you just said, who you sold it to is cool, but so to me, when we talk and we use the word like indie, right? Like probably we've really overused that word in the last year, I imagine. But to me, it's also like a lifestyle, right? Like you guys have that mindset as a family, the entrepreneur mindset, the sort of mom and pop shop theme, like building from the ground up sort of atmosphere that you grew up in. So you kind of live the lifestyle too, I guess is what I'm saying. That's your upbringing.
It was really great for me. So when Ken and my mom started their company together, Job Track, I was still in high school. And when they first started it, I worked there. My best friend worked there. My sister worked there. My grandmother worked there, right? And they bootstrapped this thing, which eventually turned into one of the big success stories of that time. But so we really got, I said, firsthand seat in watching them start this company from absolutely nothing and having so many people say to them, this isn't going to work. And at the time, right, Ken had just graduated college. My mom had been a full-time mom. And now people right out of college and, people who were stay-at-home moms start things. But at that time, that was kind of unheard of. And so they had big headwinds against them of people saying, you're not the right team. This isn't going to work out. And they proved everyone wrong.
I love it. That's incredible. That's awesome.
It was like, you hear these stories all the time of entrepreneurs, but it was really one of perseverance, and it turned into, the 10-year overnight success story. I mean, we worked very, very hard, and, we're very focused on providing an amazing product, providing what we call legendary customer service, and have dozens and dozens of examples of how we would bend over backwards to make sure our clients, which were college and university career centers, actually, who we had partnerships with for their job posting efforts. And like Jay said, it turned into a fantastic success.
I'm familiar with the term legendary when you use that. Explain to us a little bit how that's different from just normal when you're talking about that service.
I can give you one example. I don't want to drag it on too long, but here's an example. So, this is back in the early days. This is the late 80s, and we were providing one of the first job posting services, computerized job posting services. And so a college career center that was probably 100 miles away from where we were located in West Los Angeles delivered them their computer. They had no idea how to set it up. So we set it up. I ran the wires through the ceiling down to the computer, trained them on how to use it. They called me back, a week later saying that, they weren't quite familiar with how to do something, or the computer wasn't turning on or off. And so, hopped in the car, drove up there and turned the computer on and showed them how to use it again. So, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of stories just like that, just bending over backwards.
Exactly. It's that next level of dedication to customer service that you have to do, especially when you're really starting something out, because that's what's going to separate you from a bigger company, for example, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
There's absolutely no question, and we feel the exact same way with Goodpods. I mean, we're listening to what our audience, what our user base, wants in the app and in the company. And again, we are working our tails off to truly exceed their expectations. And it's just ingrained in us, and that's what we do.
I'm really proud to be an indie podcaster, but I do know one of the things that I have the most difficult time keeping up with is editing this very podcast. It kicks my butt every week, but I will tell you, I did find a solution to this and a team that I can trust to edit my podcast, the team at How's It Podcasting. I met these guys online, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little skeptical at first, right? Like, this is my baby, and for me to trust somebody else with it was a really big deal. I did give them a shot, and I've just been so satisfied with the results. They understand that you don't have the most amount of money to spend. They have very affordable options to edit your podcast. I do think it'll help you keep your podcast going longer and help you maintain that level of creativity that you're needing, because that needs to be your main focus, is actually creating the content. I want you to reach out to them and give them a shot. How's It Podcasting. So it's HOWZIT Podcasting. On Twitter, you can find them at How's It WP. Same with Instagram, How's It WP. And on Facebook, look up How's It Podcasting. Their email is howsitwp@gmail.com. This will all be in the show notes, no worry. But if you really want to spend that time focusing on the content you're creating and not just spending hours and hours beyond hours editing, I highly encourage you to check out How's It Podcast Editing. Perfect segue there. So I'm sure there's a little bit of other business in between that and then, but getting into the Goodpods piece, we know, like JJ mentioned earlier and before, the mindset behind it. But when, like, what was the determining factor in your mind that thought, like, investing in this particular thing was a good idea? Because, yeah, it sounds good, right? Like, you can see what the people are listening to, your friends. But from an investment standpoint, a business case, what you're putting that together in the podcasting space, the podcast player space, what kind of things were you looking at to make those decisions, and why did you make the decision?
You know, it seemed very obvious to us that there was a need in the space for something that helped with discovery in the way that people actually discovered things, which is asking their friends what they're listening to. It happens at every dinner party. If you look on, Slack groups or Twitter, everyone's saying, what podcast are you listening to? And so to us, it seemed very obvious that there should be a way for you to go on, see what your friends are listening to, and press play or bookmark it or save it for later, whatever you want to do, but a player that incorporated this social aspect. So Goodreads for podcasts or Instagram for podcasts. So that as a concept seemed obvious to us. Then we went ahead and started talking to people. So we've already sort of established that I like talking, but I went ahead and spoke to, I kid you not, Jeff, 700 people, ranging from, top podcasters like Malcolm Gladwell down to people who were just starting their podcast with just a few listens a week, to the heads of podcast production companies, to people who listen all the time and people who never listen, just to test out our idea to say, do you agree with us? Do you think something like this would be good? And so once we got all that feedback, we created the product, put it out there, and to Ken's point, we haven't stopped listening. I mean, you've been giving us great feedback for the past year. And so we're constantly just incorporating what the audience is saying. And so we have a really good finger on the pulse that this is indeed solving a problem.
Ken, how did you, from a financial funding standpoint and just investment of not only funds, but your time, what was the convincing factor for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. The convincing factor, I mean, whenever we start a new business, it's truly all consuming. It is 20 hours a day with 4 hours of sleep. And this was the type of idea that got me excited enough, I felt was important enough, and there was a big enough need that, I was consumed. So I thought we just had to build this thing. And if we build it, and we did it, and we did a good job, and we exceeded expectations, people would gravitate toward it on the podcaster and the listener side. So I felt it was right to take a risk financially on this company, and right to take the risk, again, with my and my family's time.
Where were we at here, like timeline wise? Like, what year were we at when this was happening?
It's during the pandemic, really. So just a couple of years ago, and, it took some time to build it. And I'd say, we've been improving the product all along, each and every week with new releases. And, I don't think we're exactly where we want to be yet, but we're pretty darn close, and it's getting really, really good.
To be clear, Ken, you're never going to say we're exactly where we want to be, right? I mean, that's the nature of the business. So
Well, that's right.
Yeah, that's the thing about being a founder and being a builder, right? Is you have these great ideas and you put them out there, and then you see more great ideas. And I think one of the really neat things about this company is it's really a community. And so we are constantly engaging with the audience and hearing how we can be of service to them. And so I hope we never get to the point where we say we're exactly where we want to be.
No. I totally agree with you. I just think, we're at a really good pace now where we're launching new features, every few weeks and putting out improvements to the app. And it's actually a lot of fun right now.
Why did you start out with just the app? Was that the more logical route for a podcast player, or was it easier, or what were the reasons there?
I think it was the idea that people, the majority listen to podcasts while on your phone, right? While you're on the road doing stuff. So that's where we started, but not where we will end.
Yeah. And what we've learned, right, is that there's a sizable demand for people to use our product on the desktop, on the web. And so we're well into the design and the programming of a desktop version. And we cannot wait until that gets out. I think people are absolutely going to love it. It looks really good so far.
That was one of the first things that we talked about. And I guess we can kind of go down that route. So you guys were really taking care. I don't want to say taking care. You guys were really addressing the issue as far as discoverability on one end, where you were able to see what your friends and your people that you're associated with, or whoever you wanted to follow, were listening to. Here comes in on the other end, Jeff, right? I'm not giving myself all the credit, but on the other end, I say we, like I'm not an official member of the team, but there was an opportunity for podcasters as well. And I think after we got a really good response from that tweet I sent out, started the group, and there weren't like a lot of groups in there that had a whole lot of members, right? There were a few that had some. We kind of ramped up the group, and then the indie podcaster, we'll call it, requests started coming in. And I know that you guys asked me, I think it was probably Ken, let's have a Zoom meeting, right? And I got to meet the team. And beforehand, you challenged me with coming in with a handful of ideas for the meeting and for improvements on the app to get more podcasters onto the app and where they could truly benefit from being on the app.
It's pretty neat. I was just checking out Indie Podcasters again. So you have 1,000 people in this group with you, Jeff, which is amazing, of indie podcasters all supporting each other that you've started. And I think that's just great. I mean, you've built up quite a reputation and following in this world because I think there's a real need for community amongst these smaller creators.
And for those who don't know, I mean, the groups that Jeff and JJ that you guys are referring to, this was one of the ideas that, we collectively came up with was you call it a Facebook groups, but for podcasts. And early on, that wasn't one of our original features, but it made just so much sense. And it's really interesting and exciting seeing new groups that are launched and created organically every single day, from indie podcaster group to a Dungeons and Dragons group to a World Wrestling Entertainment group to astrology group, and it goes on and on and on. There must be thousands of groups of podcast sharing groups that have been created on the app at this point.
Yeah, JJ's favorite example used to be gardening, the gardening group on there. Now we've got you way more to use, JJ. You've got you way more.
Early days. And you've got thousands and thousands of followers on your profile also, which is really fun. So every time you listen to something, I mean, what I think is so neat for podcasters is that every listen on Goodpods is a piece of marketing because it goes onto the feed so people see it. So we see under the radar podcasts go viral as they go from friend to friend to friend to friend. And that's why we started this, right? That's when we saw that happen, the first time we saw it happen, we had this moment of like, it's working, right? Because then it's working for listeners who are finding great new content. It's working for podcasters who were growing their audience. And so every time we see something like that, which is all the time now, but it makes us feel really good because we put a lot of time into this based on an idea. And it turns out the idea was right.
Well, here's the other thing that's happening is that there's a whole new genre of podcast influencers that have cropped up. Jeff, you being one of them for sure. Like JJ said, you have thousands of followers on the Goodpods app. So every time you listen to a podcast, those followers are seeing what you listen to. And, you've built up a level of trust with those followers. And I imagine a lot of them will go and listen to the shows, the episodes that you've just listened to. And that's really neat because, there have been beauty influencers, there are travel influencers, there are influencers in every genre. And now we think, we've created an opportunity for podcast influencers.
We had this meeting, we met, and I came with a handful of ideas like you suggested, like you asked. And one of them was, we talked about, I say we, right? Because I love working with you guys. And it was funny because to this day, maybe not to this day, but until a few months ago, several people or a lot of people actually would ask me if I was on your guys' literally on your payroll. So that always made me laugh. Like, you work for Goodpods, right? I'm like, you know what I mean, Ken. There were a lot of, that's, I guess, what the impression was. But anyway, so we had this meeting, and one of the things we discussed almost right off the bat was this rankings system for podcasts and indie podcasts.
That was really a brilliant insight, and I give you credit for that for sure. And so what we all notice is that the same, shows, episodes get, reach the top 10 charts on all of the big podcast players. And there really wasn't a recognition for the indie shows, on these players, on these apps. And so we created, on our podcast charts, a little toggle that says indie podcasts only. And when you toggle that on, magically, it's the top indie shows by category, by business, by education, by audio fiction. And it's really neat. It's one of the features that we're most proud of. And again, we thank you for helping us to think through that idea.
No, I thank you all because it was great. I mean, there were others too, but I think that was like the first time that that community that I'm not saying I started the community on Twitter, but the indie podcast community that I tried to cater and grow felt important on a podcast player app.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the original mission of this, which is letting all voices be heard, right? So you don't want to just keep seeing the same ones on the top 10 list because they just keep being the same ones on the top 10 list. You want to really know what some other great podcasts are.
Just like every website needs a home on the internet, so does your podcast. And that's why I'm going to tell you about my pals at Podtrix. Podtrix is a new podcast hosting provider focused on keeping the creators creative. Because at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. The focus for the creator needs to be on creating the content. And having a podcast host like Podtrix allows you to do that. Starting at a Plus plan, Podtrix allows you to create unlimited shows. Yes, that's right, unlimited shows. No matter what your plan selection is, though, you can create unlimited episodes. Podtrix supports adding multiple users, and you actually get to pick and decide what access each individual has. This is a big deal. I'll tell you a story real quick. It's probably 5 years ago. My friends and I had a podcast, and my friend got on there accidentally on the podcast hosting and deleted the whole entire freaking podcast. Well, if I would have had Podtrix back then, this wouldn't have happened because he would have never had access to it. And I think Podtrix offers a lot of big upcoming features too, because this really is a platform from an independent creator for independent creators. Another cool thing here, the trials are not limited because Podtrix does not want to rush your creative process. However long it takes for you to be ready is how long Podtrix will be waiting to help you be successful. They are offering a special discount to the listeners of this podcast. If you use the promo code IndiePod, you will get 25% off your first 3 months of any Podtrix plan. Free trials may not have a timeline, but this offer does. This promo code is valid until May 31st at the end of the day. So you should get on this as quick as you can. Get on it right now. Go to podtrix.com/podcaster, use the promo code, and get started with Podtrix.
I was just speaking to someone actually the other day, and she said she was driving from New York to Florida, and she wanted to listen to something and couldn't find something and found the whole process of looking for a podcast totally stressful, and that she didn't have something when she had to hop into the car. And she had this same reaction of like, ugh, I know what those top 10 are. I don't want to listen to them. And so she came on our app and looked at the indie top 10. She hadn't heard of these other podcasts before.
Yeah, that's by design, and that's what makes it awesome. So I think that as this all kind of went out and materialized, you guys started getting a lot more active on Twitter, and I know your DMs were getting blown up. And since then, you guys have really grown on there from a engagement piece, right? Because before, I remember you guys you were engaging, but I'll be honest with you, not even near to the level that you are today on that social media platform. It's just like, and I remember like talking in the beginning and being like, you guys need to tweet more. You need to tweet more. Probably drove Ken nuts, but I think it's really paid off on that end.
Yeah, our social team is, well, it really serves us because this is a real way for us to engage beyond on Goodpods itself, obviously, but it's a way for us to go reach new creators and smaller creators to tell them about Goodpods and get their ideas and all kinds of things. And so it's been really great for us.
The crazy thing for me is, and let's just talk from like a business marketing standpoint, doing this for the right reasons for indie podcasters, yes, but putting that aside, this is like a really classic example of what we did and what even continues to happen today. And this is a good example for podcasters listening of just good old fashioned guerrilla marketing, not dropping a bunch of money on ads and all that. This really just, you catered to the needs of the customer, the consumer will say, and the consumer took care of the marketing.
Well, I do think that if you have a good product, right? If you have a good product, then people start talking about it. And that's what we've been going for, is how do we make the product great? And how do we make sure we're providing something that people want and need? How are we fixing a problem for people?
And again, we're tackling it from both sides. From the podcaster side, how do you build an audience? Mm-hmm. And from the podcast listener side, how do you discover great content to listen to? So, yeah, but I think that's right. If we can build a product and meet those two needs, then the marketing will sort of organically take care of itself.
And it has, right? I mean, the first phase is your app, first couple of phases of your app that you've gone through here, that has really been a significant part of it. You worked with me, you worked with others, you truly cared and catered to the needs, and you asked a lot of questions, good questions along the way, by the way. And everybody starts believing and getting behind that because of the excellent customer service. And that was my big thing when I would talk about Goodpods in the beginning. Literally, like, I have JJ's phone number. I can talk to Ken. They're that deep into growing this Goodpods, their business. They're very hands-on. And there's not a lot of companies in regards to podcasting, or players, should we say, that you can literally talk to the co-founders.
Well, Jeff, we're very conscious of, even as we continue to grow this company, that everyone takes some time doing customer service and talking to our users, because we never want to lose that connection on any level in this company.
Yeah, I would say one other thing too is that I think we believe to our core that what we're doing is very important. And important in terms of, again, as Jay said, there's so many amazing voices, and it's truly across the world that need, deserve, and, should be getting more exposure. And that, I think that really drives us, again, on both sides, helping them get exposure and helping listeners find them. It's important for society. And I don't want to sound too, like Pollyanna, but it's something that we truly, deeply believe into our core.
This goes back to your upbringing there, right? Like I said, it's a lifestyle, this indie thing, this mom and pop sort of local, right? But I get it. It's not like, I'm not saying regionally local when I'm talking to podcasting. I'm just saying the indie theme of it is really a lifestyle on the things that you do. And you both are an example of that.
Well, I think of all these small creators as entrepreneurs themselves, right? Like, you're creating this business called your podcast. And so all the things that come with that, which is figuring out how to launch it and market it and monetize it. And so it is a business, and it's tough. And creating the content is one small part of it. And we are really trying to help with the next part of it, which is now let's go get that content heard.
Hey, Jay, you brought something up that just sparked a thought too, is that monetizing it, right? So that was a feature that we added not too long ago, is a tip jar. So again, these small creators who, even a few bucks that a listener might decide to send their way, we created the opportunity for them to do that on the app. And, we take 0% of it. So the podcaster sets it up. They use PayPal, they use Patreon, they use, whatever service that they're most familiar with. And the listeners have the ability to send them a tip. And we were thrilled and excited to launch that feature.
Yeah, I got to be the first person I remember. You guys were thrilled, just completely thrilled.
Anything we can do to help these indie podcasters, like JJ said, to, build their business, stay on the air, we're all for.
You guys are fully into it now, right? Even from like the industry piece. The industry folks know you as well now too. Won't go on a long rant here, but tons of positivity, even a little bit of negativity thrown your way, and the way some things were handled. You guys are fully in this now. I mean, how does that feel? That's awesome. Was this timeline meet your expectations?
It's funny, right? Because again, when you build something, you want everything to go faster, slower, whatever it is. And so I don't know that we had expectations, but I do know that it feels amazing. Like nothing makes me happier than going on, social media or on our own app and just seeing people's gratitude for Goodpods and how it's helped their shows and helped them. And that's why we're doing it. So I think Goodpods should be, 400 times bigger. And that's what we're going after.
I do too.
Everyone should be using Goodpods.
I think the opportunity is endless. And you look at nothing makes me happier when you see an under the radar show that's really interesting that one person listens to, and then the next thing you see is that, somebody that follows them listens to it, and then somebody who follows them listens to it, and it just goes viral. And that's the dream, and, it's working. So I love that.
You have probably heard of promo swaps with other podcasters, but have you heard of feed drops? Feed drops are when one podcaster plays an entire episode of another podcast. The idea is for the listeners of the show to experience an entire episode before they decide if they want to subscribe. I'm going to tell you what, this is way more effective than promo swaps, and I have the perfect person that can do this for you, my good friend Greg at Indie Drop-In Network. Indie Drop-In Network is a network built around feed drops. You submit an episode, and if approved, it appears on one of Indie Drop-In's shows with all your contact details in front of established audience. Best of all, it's free. So, if you are a true crime, paranormal, scary, or comedy podcaster looking to find new listeners, consider doing this. I've done it, and I can tell you it does work. What the hell are you waiting for? I should probably tell you how to do it. Maybe that's what you're waiting for. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. I'll say it again. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. You're damn right. Dang, that felt good. What's next get a few more minutes here. What's next for Goodpods? Aside from just the indie podcaster piece, what would you say in the website piece? What are some goals that you guys have? Let's just say for the remainder of the year.
So the web desktop version is a big project, and we're deep into that now. I think one of the other things, many ideas that we're working on, is more tools and opportunities for listeners to interact and communicate amongst each other and with the podcast hosts. And we think there's still a lot of untapped potential there.
I'd also say, Jeff, we're well known, but we want to be even more well known. So my goal, beyond all the things Kenny's talking about in product, is really to get people to start using Goodpods as their player. Because more and more people, right? We've already got so many, but more and more continue to spread the word, because it's more than just kind of using it as your player. It's really a movement around a place to go where you can discover great content, discover great audiences, build a community if you want, talk to people if you want. But here is a place that really cares deeply about this space and the people who are in it. And so if we can continue to communicate that out there to users, and we know that once somebody comes on to Goodpods and starts using it as their player and invites their friends, they stay. We've got metrics that show that. So I'm really focused on just making sure the world knows about Goodpods.
You do a great job with that, JJ. You really do. You spend a lot of time on that, I know.
Yeah, I do, because as Ken says, I really care about it. I love this so much. And so we want to get it out there.
Yeah, no, and it's not the only thing that you're doing, right? So to invest a full time on it says a lot when you have a lot of other things going on too. That just shows the dedication.
This is mostly it, though. This is where, this is where our time is spent.
Were you always laughing at me? Are you always laughing at me?
I always laugh because this is our second company together, right? And so our first company we started back in 2005, that I wonder when it's going to happen that Ken and I go for more than a day without talking to each other. Even on my honeymoon, I spoke to Ken every single day because we've been running these companies together. And so, yeah, this is where we spend all our time and talking about it, brainstorming and doing and working with the team. And so I think it's a busy life around this.
I'm going to ask maybe just a couple questions, but a real quick one. And this is going to be a tough one. I want to make sure Ken kicks off this answer here. I'm going to put him on the spot. Is that all right, Ken?
Go for it.
Goodpods is a business at its core. It is. And it's a business that needs to make money. What are some things that you guys might start doing to do that? Because I can notice, you go onto the app now, there's not ads plastered all over it. Different people or companies or businesses can purchase. Eventually, are we going to be seeing these sort of things, from sort of a revenue piece from Goodpods? what are some things that you guys are going to have to do or to make the business end of it pick up with the time and money that you're investing?
Yeah, it's really not something, honestly, that we're focusing on at this point.
You're not. I know you're not.
Yeah. So, when the answer, and I don't want to be, flippant, is that we truly want to build a massive audience and then we'll figure it out from there. And look, that's the way, Instagram, that was their ethos at Instagram, at Snapchat, at Facebook. And look, good things will come, good opportunities will come down the road if we can build the audience and the number of app downloads that we believe we can. So we just haven't spent a whole lot of brain cycles on the revenue portion yet. And I don't see us doing that for some time.
This takes dedication, though. I mean, you guys are riding this out. Like, you are truly making sure that this is a app that is functioning well and able to meet a lot of the consumer needs, because I'll just be honest, like, you can't ride it out forever, but you guys are, before you get to that revenue piece, you guys are really dedicated to building this app.
You have to be, right? I mean, that's what we've learned with all of our business. You have to be, almost obsessed with building it out, with the product, with marketing, with customer service. And that's where we are. We are solely focused on building the absolute best podcast player, podcast community, podcast, discovery platform ever.
JJ?
I was just saying, yep. I was nodding. You guys couldn't see me. I was smiling here and nodding.
Jeff, here's a bit of the learning behind that. So when we started the first company with my mother, with, again, JobTrack, people would ask, what's your exit strategy? And this is back, we launched it back in 1988. And the term exit strategy never once truly ever crossed our mind. It was, anathema to us. We just said, what do you mean exit strategy? Our exit strategy is to build a great business. And, it's pretty much the same here. It's really just to build a great business and a great product. And then good things will hopefully happen after that.
Yeah, that's really that's all you can do. And if you stay true to the mission, you just got to keep riding it out and just stay the course of what your plan is. And that's exactly what and it's awesome. It's a family thing, right? Like, I don't know if people realize that. You guys don't say that enough. This is like a family business. That is a really awesome thing these days, to kind of celebrate and embrace that.
It's a family business. And, of the 4 founders, 3 of them are women, which is another thing that I think we can all embrace as well.
I do have one more question for you, JJ. Speaking of that, you have become a really awesome face in this industry, particularly from your experience, but also with this business. How much does that mean to you? And do you try to really utilize that platform that you have to do that?
Yeah, I was very lucky because I had a mom who was an entrepreneur. So it never occurred to me. People always say, right, you have to see it to be it. And so I got to see it my whole life, but not everyone has that. And so I think it is important for women, for people of color, for all kinds of people who are in leadership positions or doing interesting things to just be out there and talking about what they're doing and being honest about it and saying there are easy parts, there are hard parts, and just to be out there. It is meaningful to me. It's really meaningful to me. And so I feel lucky. I mean, I had an opportunity to do it a lot when I had my show on NBC News where we talked about my business, but also I got to highlight a lot of other women businesses. But I do like talking to women who are interested in starting business, who are younger and curious about it. I enjoy getting to do that.
I lied to you. One other question, JJ. Will you follow me one day on Twitter?
I am going on right now while we are talking and following you on Twitter. Jeff Townsend, a.k.a. Podcast Father. Follow. Done.
Man, been sweating that one for a year now. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Hey, I do want to give you a second. Like I said, there could be people listening that haven't got on there and downloaded it all. Who wants to take this final pitch here for Goodpods?
I am going to let JJ take this final pitch.
All right. I will take it. First of all, everyone should go to either the App Store or Google Play Store, download Goodpods. It is a podcast player like any other. Use it as a podcast player, but it has the added benefit of all of these social aspects. So if you are a podcaster, the way it will help you is because when people listen to your show on Goodpods, it's marketing. Their friends will see it. So come on, start listening on Goodpods, have an active profile, and use the share buttons to invite your friends and fans to follow you and listen on Goodpods. If you're a listener, you will never, ever, ever have that moment where you're saying, what should I listen to now? You're hopping in the car, you're going for a run, and you spend all that time kind of thinking, what should I listen to? You will have a feed, a constant feed of what your friends are listening to and great suggestions. How'd I do?
That was good. What do you think,
And
Ken?
one last thing, you can join the Indie Podcast group, which is moderated by the podcast father himself on the app, which is, again, it's like a Facebook group, but for podcasts, and where you'll find a really supportive community there as well.
Absolutely. And I will say, I appreciate both of you. I've enjoyed getting to work with you over the last year and getting to know you. And like I said, I think at the end of the day, like my big thing for Goodpods is no matter what anybody says or what anybody thinks, which I'm not saying they think bad, but you guys are good people and you're caring people. And that means a lot to me. And I think it means a lot to the other people that use the app too. So again, thank you for being good friends and just everything that you've done for me as well.
No, thank you. We appreciate that. And we've appreciated getting to know you over the last year. And look at what you said about good people really rings home with me too, because the people that we've met through this business so far in the podcast community are just amazing people. And we're fortunate, right, to be able to interact with so many great people. So the feeling is mutual.
Oh, wow.
Thanks so much for having us on, Jeff, and having us on together.
Yes, thank you for convincing Ken to do this. It means a lot to me. Yep, we'll keep in touch.
Bye, Jeff.
Thanks for listening and thanks for telling a friend. But more importantly, thank you for supporting independent content creators. I hope you enjoyed this episode and continue to listen to the upcoming ones. I'm really trying to do something special here by highlighting all the amazing things all these amazing content creators are doing. I hope you continue to join me on my journey. I'm Jeff, aka Podcast Father, the Indie Podcaster. Keep being you, keep being great.